Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, I'm talking about a subject that has affected me personally, affects many of my clients, and I just see it becoming more and more prevalent online these days, which is living in fear. And this is perpetuated by social media and all of this knowledge that we have now at our fingertips, which can be really useful. Things like Instagram and podcasts really helped me to get my health back and gave me information that I was never going to find in my doctor's office. But now, because of these 10-second clips and clickbait and people just wanting to obviously promote their stuff and get information out there, it's meaning that we have these titles like the one thing that's going to kill you or stop doing this immediately. And I kind of do some of that sometimes. So maybe I'm part to play here, but I always try and give more context in the caption, and I really avoid trying to fearmonger because I know that that's not helpful, and a lot of people are dealing with health anxiety, and that's why I prefer to do longer form content here on the podcast instead of just trying to give you all the information in a 30-second clip. I can spend an hour with you, have you listen to me for a long period of time and give you all the nuances, just to explain things a little bit deeper. But more and more clients are telling me how overwhelmed they are. They're having decision fatigue, they're questioning everything, they're becoming fearful of drinking tap water or even just living in their home and breathing in the air because they're fearful that they have mold, which I can definitely relate to that specific thing. So it's very sad, and I just hopefully want to support you in today's episode if that's something that you're dealing with and give you some words of wisdom as someone who's also been there on my health journey. So I'll share my experience to begin, and then I'll give you some advice, some general advice, how the fear could just be potentially driven by something physically, internally, but it could also be just coming from social media and maybe this information overload, as I was talking about. So with my experience just living in fear, it's happened many different stages and many different triggers and reasons why. It started as, I'll use the term fear loosely for this first example because it wasn't really a fear of gaining weight or having excessive body fat. It was just that I wanted to be lean and I wanted to lose weight. So it started as calorie counting, me going to the gym, doing back-to-back workouts, losing weight, and that triggered, if you know my story, a lot of health issues. And then I became like the fit skinny girl, and that became my identity. People were complimenting me, that fueled the problem. And I was scared of losing that identity. Because if you have lost weight and had all of these people telling you how amazing you look, that makes you think that you didn't look good before. And if you stray away from that, people are going to like question you and be like, oh, what's happened to her? Just talking about you behind your back. So that was another fear of mine, is like, I can't gain weight now and I always have to stay like this because even though my health is a mess and I feel worse than I've ever done, I don't want to put on weight because it makes it then look like I am lazy, I'm not practicing what I preach. This also came a little bit later too. So I was a health practitioner or a student nutritionist, and I was at the other end of the spectrum where I was overweight, and people would ask me what I was doing, what I was studying, and what business I'd just set up, and I'd feel stressed telling them because I didn't look like the typical nutritionist because I was dealing with my own health problems and had so many hormone imbalances and problems to address, a lot of toxicity. So I would almost, I'm probably over exaggerating and imagine this in my mind, but I could sense that they were like taken aback a little bit when I was 40 pounds overweight and I'm telling them that I'm a nutritionist and help people with their health, which I was doing. I was still getting really good results, and you might have worked with me at that time. I still had all of the knowledge, but my experience was a little bit more complicated, a little bit more complex, so it took a bit longer than ideal, but I eventually got there. And then I developed fear for other reasons. It came after a lot of other health issues developed on my health journey when I worked in the US for summer 20, when I was 19, actually, 2014, I think. That trip, I ended up with Lyme disease. severe food poisoning, picked up parasite infections, major adrenal issues because of the workload and the fact that I was still trying to diet and work and teach exercise classes for 8 to 10 hours a day. And then that trip, I realized I had a break from mold in my family home. And then I eventually came back after 7 to 9 weeks and felt the worst I've ever felt. So I was initially glad that I'd got some answers from a nutritionist. I went to see a nutritionist shortly after because I was just bloated after every single thing that I was eating. My skin was a mess. I was on the pill this time because of losing my period when I was overtraining. So I was on the pill and I knew that that was kind of masking the problems at that point. And the results that I got back from the functional labs were that my thyroid was off, I had major nutrient deficiencies, leaky gut, SIBO, candida, at least 2 parasites that were showing on testing, but I think I had a lot more because even when the tests were clear, I was doing parasite cleansing a few years ago and it was still present. I could visibly see them. But then I kind of felt happy that I got all of these answers, but then I also felt really overwhelmed and again scared, worried, fearful that I had all of these things wrong with me. I'd gone from having no clue what was going on, no direction, no hope from the doctors and the medical system to having it seemed like 1,000,001 things wrong with me, and it felt like my body was broken. I felt very like victim mode. Why is this happening to me? Why can other people go out and drink alcohol and eat junk food and be absolutely fine, not have to go to the gym, not have to be in bed by 10 o'clock every night? So there was a period where I was very victim mode and just blaming everyone else and very angry at the world and the medical system. But then I realized that wasn't serving me, and actually holding on to that was contributing to more problems. And because I was so symptomatic at one stage when I returned to the mold, the home with mold in, and I developed all of these digestive issues. I came off the pill. I got really sick, and this was my early 20s for several years. I became fearful of food and supplements. So all of the things that I was trying to do to make me better, I would often have bad reactions to them, and then I would just become scared of eating anything. And at that point, I didn't really care about my weight. I dropped a lot more weight unintentionally because I wasn't absorbing and I was limiting my food. I was restricting my food so much, not because I wanted to be skinny. At that point, I honestly didn't care what I looked like. I just wanted to feel good at that stage and get my energy, my brain function back. But I was doing these things and would have symptoms like headaches at like a minimal level, but then it got really bad sometimes. I'd have literal seizures, intense itching spells that would stop me from sleeping all night long, would drive me insane. I would have dizziness, I would faint, I would have migraines sometimes. I'd have to just like stay in a dark room. So I restricted my diet. It started off at the very beginning just gluten-free, and then I removed dairy, maybe saw 5% improvement with each of these. So I just kept going. I thought, I just have to eat this super strict diet and that's going to fix everything. But I know that now that was a slippery slope and actually just meant that I developed more sensitivities, more nutrient deficiencies, and it was even harder to introduce those foods back in down the line. So I removed dairy, then soy, then eggs for the longest time, grains, alcohol, corn, nightshades. It was like I felt like some relief, but it's probably just because I was eating less and not giving my digestive system anything to do. So obviously I was less bloated, but then I would just keep going, like, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I was actually reacting to all of them. It wasn't just in my head. I would have certain reactions from histamine-rich foods, certain reactions from salicylates, and it was very, very obvious. And I tried and tested it multiple times, but it just kept getting worse. And then the fear just exacerbated things even more. And I was unknowingly being exposed to mold at the time. So that's why I was super sensitive. I had leaky gut. It wasn't just in my head, but the more restricted I became, the more sick I became. I wouldn't eat out for a long while. I was worried about the oils and the pans that they were using in cooking the food in at a restaurant, worried about things being non-organic and, God forbid, drinking tap water. And it was bordering on orthorexia at the time, which is an obsession with health, but it was coming from a place of sheer desperation to get better and to heal. Some people just do it because they have this intense fear of toxins, but that wasn't the case for me. I wasn't like scared of them, but I just felt like my body couldn't handle them. I knew that healthy bodies could tolerate them and that they weren't just killing everyone and causing major issues. But because my body was reactive and really weak at the time, I was just trying to do everything that I could to support my body. So it was coming from a place of love. I could have gone about it in a much better way on reflection. And I started hearing so many conflicting things, learning one thing one week at college, and then the next week hearing another practitioner online or on a podcast saying the complete opposite. Like one week we were told like animal protein and dairy products are bad and we should minimize them. And then the next week I was hearing these carnivore people talking about how that's going to heal you. And it's so confusing, even for me as a student practitioner at the time. So I can only imagine if you aren't qualified to know about nutrition, or you're not even working in the health field like I was, because even I felt overwhelmed. So imagine someone who just doesn't work in this industry at all. I can understand how stressful that can be. And I would also worry about my symptoms quite a lot. I would have a lot of fear around my symptoms and this health anxiety, which is quite common. And I always believed deep down that I could and would heal eventually, but there was obviously going to be those days where you catastrophize and question everything. I would get an acne breakout and automatically go to, what did I do? What did I do to cause this? Or what did I not do? Beating myself up for eating something different or having an extra serving of something. And it was all gluten-free, homemade, sugar-free. But if I'd have a little bit extra sweet potato, I'd be like, okay, that was why I had a breakout. Next time, I'm not going to do that. And it could be completely unrelated, and probably was. Or if I one night wouldn't do every single step of my skincare routine because I was absolutely exhausted and I maybe skipped my toner or my exfoliant, I'd be like, that's why I can't ever do that again. Or if I had a headache or painful bloating, I would always worry that I was missing something in my healing. Something must be off. I must have missed something. I must have a deeper infection that no one's picked up just yet. And then I would go on this research binge to try and find more answers, forgetting completely that the healing journey is not linear. So there are going to be good and bad times, even if you're on the right track. Like if I was doing a SIBO or gut protocol and had been doing really well for a few weeks, maybe feeling a bit better, and then out of the blue, I had a flare up of certain symptoms like bloating or my skin wasn't as good, I would literally question everything that I was doing. I would forget about all of the positive improvements that I'd been having and just hyper fixate and focus on this one day or few hours of a symptom flare up. And I would think that things are getting worse. Did me eating too many vegetables last night feed the bacteria, the SIBO, and cause me to step back? Is there something else going on that hasn't been identified? I would drive myself crazy. And the stress of this reaction would then worsen everything. It becomes such a vicious cycle. Then a big one for me, and I know some of my current clients are dealing with this too, and I'm helping guide them through. This is why I did further training as a life coach and hypnosis practitioner, EFT practitioner, subconscious reprogramming, to try and help my clients on a deeper level, because I was realizing people who I work with have already done a lot of the basic stuff. They've worked with different practitioners. They're already eating well and living as non-toxic of a lifestyle as possible. They might have already done some functional lab tests. So I'm not working with the average person who's just getting into health the majority of the time. But the fear of things like mold can really take over your life, or heavy metals or parasites or bacteria. And it's hard because knowing about and addressing mold toxicity in my own journey was a huge deal, and it ultimately gave me my health and my life back. But we often forget, and I definitely did, that it was never just mold that caused the problems. I could have potentially lived in that home, and if I would have eaten gluten-free and never taken the birth control pill, really supported my immune system, maybe took some supplements, worked on my gut health and my digestion, I probably could have lived there totally symptom-free, for a long, long time. But because I've had all of these other things like antibiotics in childhood, obviously stress and drinking too much on the weekends when I was a teenager, using toxic skincare products with artificial fragrance in and everything, that was what filled up the bucket, and then the mold was what allowed it to overflow. Or it's like like the straw that breaks the camel's back can often be the mold. So maybe you do need to remediate, move, or improve your air quality, or do some specific detox support to eliminate mycotoxins. Absolutely, it is a problem and it can affect health, but we don't want to forget everything else that led to your poor health in the first place, and you're still going to have to work on all of that anyway. The years of antibiotics, birth control pills, poor diet, intense stress, me over exercising and dieting, which triggered everything. All the focus and the blame gets put into one thing, and it's like we have the blinkers on to everything else when in reality everything is important. So if you're constantly living in fear, whether it's about your diet or whether you're on the right track or your current environment or some more deep-seated trauma that your body has shoved right down into the subconscious, this can actually be just as, if not more, harmful than things like heavy metals, mold, and parasites. Let me just repeat that. If you are constantly living in fear about your environment or if you have this underlying trauma that you've never been addressed, these emotions that you've never released, this can actually be just as, if not more harmful than heavy metals, mold, parasites, or insert whatever stress or toxin you want to. Just let that sink in a minute, because I feel like that is the overarching summary of this podcast episode. This might also be happening outside of your health too, in your general life, regarding finances, relationships, career, family. These people often refer to themselves as an anxious person, or they tell me if I'm working with them that they've always been this way, their mum was the same, which is pretty detrimental, to be honest. And if you give yourself that identity, if you're telling me that that's just how you are, your words are really powerful, and obviously you are going to feel that way because that's what you tell yourself, or how you're constantly describing yourself to others. Living in this fight and flight mode with stress hormones coursing through your bloodstream constantly is going to cause problems. So a few examples is that your blood moves away from your gut health, impairing your digestion, contributing to bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowths, low levels of good bacteria, weakened immune system. When it comes to hormones, your progesterone levels, and therefore fertility, menstrual cycles, skin, hair growth, sleep can be affected. It can decrease your thyroid and your immune function, leaving you susceptible to infections, weight gain, and fatigue. So that's why it's super important. These are just a few examples of how stress can impact your life. But when we think about stress and the word stress, people automatically just think of work or the relationships, or they think that they don't have a problem because maybe they enjoy the work that they do, they're in a happy marriage, or compared to the neighbor or the friend, they don't really think they have stress. But I'm telling you that if you are constantly worried about your health or these toxins, or whether you're on the right track, or whether what you're eating is causing problems, that is also stressful. So this fear, this anxiety comes under the category of stress. Now, I'm not saying never be stressed or scared again. These are human emotions, and they're obviously going to happen at times, and it's normal to feel stress sometimes. But if it's happening on a regular basis for a long time, or it just feels like you don't really know what's going on, you just have this underlying anxiety but can't really put your finger on why, this is where we can run into issues and it starts to become a problem. So cortisol in itself isn't inherently bad. It's when it's produced over a long period of time in high amounts, it starts to become detrimental. So I want to remind you about the power of your mind and your thoughts. We can choose our thoughts, believe it or not. And it can be difficult if your brain is set on these automatic negative pathways, but it is doable. And that is how the human brain is wired, is to always focus on the negative. It's like on social media for me. If I get 10 comments and 9 of them are positive and really supportive, but one of them is like a hate comment and they are like bashing me or attacking me for something, my brain is automatically going to focus on that as opposed to all of the other support and comments that I get. That's just normal, natural human behavior. So we have to force ourselves to remember all of the good stuff that's going on. And as I said at the start, social media and information overload, I think, is a big contributing factor in recent years. And I think it's just getting worse and worse if you are still engaging in that. That's why I tell a lot of my clients to limit social media, just in general, the researching, because it just gets too much, especially if you're dealing with health issues, brain fog, fatigue, and you're trying to work full time. Maybe you've got kids as well. No wonder you're feeling burnt out and stressed. The ideal scenario is that you would work with someone who is going to give you that guidance, whether it's a nutritionist or a life coach. P.S. I am both. If you're searching for new things all the time, or let's say you're working with someone, you're on a plan, they're telling you to follow that for the next 3 months, but then you're still researching and you're still bringing ideas to the table, or maybe we should do this lab test, maybe we should take this supplement, or questioning everything if you're not seeing improvements right away. This is telling your brain or the universe or God, whatever you believe in, that something is still wrong. And it's like you don't fully trust in what you're doing. If you had complete unwavering trust that what you was doing was helpful, that is going to give you results, because that is how the placebo effect works. There's obviously going to be an underlying like physical aspect too, but if you research the power of placebo, which I have quite extensively, then it can be more effective than things like medication. They run placebo trials in every drug that's created, and they very commonly find that the placebo, the sugar pill or the saline water solution, performs better than the actual medication that they're trying to promote. So one of the main factors in the placebo effect is if the person believes that the drug or the therapy is going to be beneficial, or they believe and trust deeply in the person who's prescribing that to them. So if you really trust a certain practitioner, you've seen testimonials, you've seen results that they get, and you really believe that you're going to get results, you very likely will, because of the power of your mind. And a lot of the time on social media and podcasts, I realized at one point that I wasn't even learning anything new. It was just the same stuff recycled over and over again, but it was just becoming more intense. Like, we all know that pesticides in non-organic food aren't good for our health, and we should try and avoid them as much as possible. So that's just like general advice that I give to most of my clients, that when possible, make these small shifts. If you can afford to buy organic, or at least clean the non-organic ones, or choose the clean 15 as opposed to the dirty dozen that are the highest sprayed, then that's good information. But if it's constantly being drilled into your brain every day and it's just getting more and more intense, like, here's how the pesticides are going to kill you and really affect this and that, and you're not going to heal if you don't eat everything organic, that is just an extreme version, and it's just taking up room in the brain, stressing you out, and it's not actually new beneficial information. So some useful tools just to help get you away from these fearful thoughts and this fearful mindset is to reframe, number one. So there's no one thing that's inherently stressful. It's all about how you interpret the situation or the event. Take public speaking, for example. One person could absolutely love and thrive doing public speaking, and it's the number one passion in life, versus someone else, and they would literally rather die than get up on stage. That's one of the biggest fears out there, is public speaking. So it's the same situation, but it's the way that someone is perceiving and reframing, and based on the history and their experiences is how they are interpreting that. So just when you're thinking about things, just moving forward, maybe through the rest of the day or the week, and something triggers you, whether it is an Instagram post or something someone says or something that you read, just ask yourself, is this actually a stress worth getting worked up about right now? Or can I see things differently? Can I just take a moment, take a breath, and just look at things a little bit more logically and clearly? Am I overreacting right now? Can I use some tools to regulate my nervous system and prevent me from going down this spiral? And it is best if we can nip it in the bud, as opposed to letting our monkey mind take over and start to spiral. And reframing just on your healing journey, can I look for things that are going well on my healing journey so far and not fixating on the negative? Because the more that you focus on something, the more of that expands. Can I remind myself with the mold example that there is no such thing as a mold-free environment or a zero mold environment? So it's not realistic to never be exposed ever again. That's not realistic. So that in itself, if you just remind yourself of that, not that you have to go and live in the middle of nowhere and burn all of your stuff and you're always just going to be this sensitive person who can't go anywhere, can't go to an old building because you're just going to have a negative effect. If you're telling yourself that, you will probably experience that. So why not choose better thoughts and create these new beliefs? And over time, a belief is just something that you've thought multiple times. So if you just repeat that, even if you don't fully believe it to begin, the more that you repeat and the more that you look for evidence that it's true, then you will eventually take that on as a belief. The second thing that you can do is breath work. So it doesn't have to be a full breath work session. It could just be you tuning into your breath for a few minutes. This is one of the easiest and fastest ways to calm the nervous system in an instant. It tells the brain and the body that everything is safe. Because if you're doing these long, slow, deep breaths in through the nose and out through the mouth, especially if it's combined with an affirmation, I tell a lot of my clients this, the affirmation, I am safe, especially for women, is very powerful. Because if your life was really in danger, then you wouldn't be able to breathe and think in those kind of calming ways. So when you're triggered by something, again, just taking a moment, pausing, asking yourself, like, do I really need to get stressed about this, or can I just do some breaths really quickly to calm things down, and you'll be feeling better in an instant. Some general nervous system support are, I call them the foundations. I talk about them quite a lot. Sleep, slowing down just in your life. If you're rushing from one thing to another, or that you literally have no downtime for yourself, then that's probably contributing to fear, because if your physiology is signaling stress, then that's going to affect your mood. And that's why crazy intense workouts may not be the best thing if you're actively dealing with anxiety, fear, or you're prone to those things. Because if you're running, sprinting, doing cardio, crazy boot camp workouts where someone's screaming down your ear, that is pretty anxiety provoking, even for the most calm person. Time in nature can be really helpful, like playing with my dog are just some general things that support my nervous system. If you hate dogs, then maybe that's not going to be the case, but to find something that you know calms your body. It could be knitting, it could be colouring, it could be reading. Ideally non-health related books or non-stressful crime, thriller, intense murder things. You want to do these things daily, not just when you're in desperate need and in times of crisis. Because doing them daily, it's like going to the gym. We do these little activities and movements daily, so that means that our body is just getting stronger over time, and we're not just going to expect our body to be able to run a marathon without any training time. So we'll become more resilient if we just take time every day to work on our nervous system. And then another one is your blood sugar regulation. If your blood sugar is all over the place, then you might have had the experience of feeling really anxious or feeling like you're about to have a panic attack even, because those spikes and crashes can, again, change your physiology, which will change the thoughts and the neurotransmitters and the cortisol levels in your bloodstream. Another tool is subconscious reprogramming. So there's a few different tools within this, like hypnosis, EFT, and there's something called like timeline therapy that can help you to find and release the root cause of this fear, and it allows the brain to see things differently. I do have a podcast episode that I'll link to on EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping, and the example that I did was feeling frustrated about your health. So that might be relevant to you, but even if not, just give it a listen, because I talk you through how to do EFT, and then you would just change up the words, the wordage and the focus, and you can use it for a ton of different things. Like when I used it after a few months of moving into my new home last year. I had a bath leak and I had a little mini meltdown, not going to lie, because I needed to work on that fear a little bit more, which I have done. And that got me from, I'd say, a 9 out of 10 fear level to almost a 0 in about 10 minutes. So EFT can be really powerful. Another thing is trauma or somatic work. If there is a more complex, longer standing or deeper trauma that needs addressing, things like childhood abuse or neglect or sexual trauma, abandonment issues, a time you felt unsafe as a child, maybe your parents had alcohol issues or you just experienced a lot of domestic stress and arguments and fighting, then you might want to look into this area. But then there are some actual physical causes of fear. I talk a lot about this on my nervous system regulation podcast episode 2, which I did late last year, 2023. I spoke about how a lot of people these days are just talking about the emotional side and how meditation can help and supporting your HRV and slowing down and getting into your feminine can be really good. But I also see the physical things that contribute, the biological, so the blood sugar issues, the parasite infections, they can be a factor. So it just depends on where you're at. If you haven't addressed all of that physical stuff and you're still eating imbalanced meals or junk food, or you're not taking any supplements, you're not getting out into nature, then maybe start there, because something as simple as low magnesium levels can cause this panic and fear and tension in the body. But if you've already been doing all of that stuff, you've been doing all of the body-based therapies and you've been working on your health for quite a while, then it probably is more brain-based with subconscious issues or fears, and you've just got to the place where you kind of know a little bit too much about health, and then it's just becoming too overwhelming for you. Something that has really helped me as well is deepening my spiritual practice. Let me know if you want me to talk a little bit more about this, because I've not done many episodes on it, but just in general, I feel so much safer and supported now that I'm connected to a higher power, whatever you want to call it. For some people, it could be religion. For me, it's more along the lines of the universe, universal laws, manifestation, energy, frequency. And I really can just trust now, and I have the belief that everything is happening for me at the perfect timing, the divine timing, and for my greater good. Of course, this gets tested every now and again, and I have to return to my practices when I'm having a bit of a meltdown, but in general, it has allowed me to be so much more calm and relaxed in my day-to-day life. And now I have evidence that when I look back, the most difficult times in my life, the most challenging, the failures, quote failures that I've had have actually been some of my biggest blessings. So if I'm ever questioning something, for example, with work, money, even my health, I always trust that I'll figure it out. And I take some action, and then I leave the rest up to the universe for additional guidance and support. Again, this might be getting a little bit too spiritual or woo-woo for you, but I was like that at one point. I was like, what are you talking about? But after learning a little bit more, and there came a point in my health journey where, again, I'd done all of the physical and I needed to actually look deeper into all of this energy work to get that last bit of my health on track. So my advice to you is, yes, work on your health overall, investigate any potential underlying causes like imbalances with your gut or your minerals. But if you feel like you've done a lot of that work and you feel like it's got to the point where it's become more mental or obsession and fixations around toxins and things that can harm you, then you will probably require a different focus, maybe less health practices, taking things off your plate rather than adding in a new detox regime or supplement protocol. A lot of the time with my clients, I'm telling them to do less. They're coming to me on 50 supplements and overtraining at the gym and waking up, and the whole day is spent supporting their health. Like they go to work and then they come home and then they meditate and then do an enema and then do this and then do that. And it's actually causing more stress to them. So I often am reducing all of the healthy habits for them to see improvements. Hopefully this is giving you some next steps, or even just make you feel less alone on your journey. And if you want to work together on your health, not just on the physical level, but the energetic, emotional too, as I discussed, then I would love to have you inside the root cause relief package. This is my signature 6-month one-to-one package that will allow us to go deeper with your healing. And I'm currently taking on clients, and I noticed this on Instagram recently, but there's actually going to be an upgrade coming to this package in a few months' time, which you will then automatically be granted into when you sign up at no extra cost. It will hopefully be complete in May, but it's just going to be this online library, this online resource that has just got so much more education and tips and guides and videos for you. So if you sign up before May, and to everyone who's already part of the root cause relief package, that'll be if you work with me one-on-one after January 2023, then you will get automatically upgraded and added to that extra bonus. Otherwise, after May, so once I've launched it, there will be a price increase to anyone new who has signed up. It will be this like healing hub, I'd like to call it, with so much more to support you whilst we work together. There'll be a section on mindset, and it'll include some of the tools that I've discussed today to help you rewire your subconscious, such as hypnosis, journal prompts, and videos on subjects like limiting belief. Deeper dives into nutrition, detox practices like coffee enemas, so really a holistic resource for you to just get even better results with. I'm so excited for it. I've even asked my Pilates teacher, Katie, to film some Pilates workouts, which you'll get access to. And she is the best. I love her workouts. So I can't wait to share them and even just have them for myself, something to do at home. This will be an ever-growing library to accompany your personalized supplement protocol. And again, if you sign up before the price increase and official release in May, you'll get access to this at the current prices. Check out the root cause relief link in the show notes. You can also book a 30-minute enrollment call if you just want to chat a little bit further before going ahead, or you can just apply to work with me by completing the form on the webpage. If you are ready to go, ready to start, then I would love to have you. So I don't want you to let this fear hold you back any longer, because everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of this fear. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would love for you to leave me a rating and review on your podcast app, as this helps to support the show and it allows it to reach more people with this valuable information. Come and say hi over on Instagram. I'm at Viva Natural Health. And if you haven't already, check out my website, vivanaturalhealth.co.uk, for tons more free resources and to discover how I could support you further. I currently offer one-on-one consultation packages if you want my top-level support, then more affordable group programs and self-paced online courses. So there really is something for everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here next week for another episode.